Hey guys, I thought that I would make another quick video today. I just had an interview. Um, I am currently working. I'm just keeping my horizons open. I've been at my current job for about 4 years or so, and I recently came back to the United States. I'm living here in Austin. Sorry about that. And I work fully remotely right now, and I'm just considering my options about maybe working for a local U.S. shop somewhere and having my coworkers in an office that I see and stuff like that, and just trying to establish another degree of normalcy in my life. I've been fully remote and kind of like drifting around Asia for years now, and kind of wanting to just get back to more kind of like traditional regular work where I like interact with people in person on a daily basis at the work space and stuff like that. After a while, I personally start to miss it. I work in tech. I'm a site reliability engineer. Um, a lot of people, a lot of developers, a lot of people that work in tech like the full time remote thing. They move to a cheap area, their money is able to get them a lot farther, and that's completely fine and valid and works for a lot of people. For me, I don't know, just kind of like the normalcy of like going into the city and going into the office and working with people. Sometimes I like hybrid schedules where I'm working in person in an office a few times per week, but not all 5 days per week. And it has the flexibility to where, if a week goes by when I just want to be heads down at home and really productive in terms of like writing code and getting a lot of stuff done, I have the option to do that. And, if I want to collaborate with teammates and work in person together and be able to draw on a whiteboard together and come up with plans together in person and stuff, I can do that too. And I don't like, different, there are a lot of people that advocate for full-time remote work, and, all of this stuff can be done remotely with modern technology and the internet and video conferencing and this and that. But I think that there's something that's missing in that when you never interact in person, when you never have sessions in person. I think that you're missing a little piece of like collaboration and teamwork and job satisfaction and clarity. If you're never in the same room together. That's just my personal beliefs. People could make other paradigms work just as well, and that's completely fine. There's more than one way to do almost everything in life, and so valid and in a valid and efficient manner. And so I'm not my way or the highway, or I'm right and everybody else is wrong about virtually anything, especially like this sort of stuff. Yeah, that being said, kind of like, my experience with interviewing and applying for jobs and stuff like that. I've been working in the tech industry for over 10 years. Before that, I worked in molecular pharmacology research. I was a research assistant. Um, Started working in tech because there's basically no money in being a research assistant or working on basic science research, like academically. People with PhDs and stuff like that in that industry made like 60K or whatever. And it's just not, when they paid more than that for the degree that they have. And so to me, it's just kind of like not a really viable field to work in and really do better for yourself. Super important. I mean, that's how drugs and everything like that are invented and discovered and tested and in whatever. But yeah, just not for me basically. And so I started off in the industry as technical support and kind of moved into DevOps and site reliability engineering from there. I've built up a pretty little resume for myself. I've worked at a lot of attractive names. I have name brand recognition on my resume or whatever, and it generally nets me, a healthy amount of interviews when I do, when I'm searching, when I'm looking to make some kind of a movement in the industry to a different organization or something like this. And So something that I've learned, because I've interviewed a lot, like a lot in this industry. I've never really had any issue with a job. I've been super lucky. We've had a really good economy up until recently, for tech workers, especially if you actually do stuff. There are a lot of, Elon Musk bought Twitter, laid off most of the staff there. I know that there's a lot of controversy around like ghost engineers or something like this right now, which I think is a little bit like the answer. The reality lies somewhere in between. Is somebody that's been an industry insider for so long, that's worked at these places, that sat in these offices and experienced many different kinds of engineers. And there's definitely engineers that don't really do a lot, and they just are kind of really good at making it seem like they're doing a lot, and making themselves out to be really productive when they're not necessarily the most productive. And on the other hand, there are some really low key, low profile people that carry organizations on their back without breaking a sweat and making a big deal about it, because it's just, their job. It's just what they're doing. And so yeah, like about the interviewing process and stuff like that right now, and filling out an organization. This is kind of just my internal thoughts that I'm having, because I just finished up an interview and I want to start to kind of record. I'm a little bit crazy in that I almost have like sort of dialogues with myself about these things when I finish an interview process, and I'm just like, oh, how did I feel about the person that I was interviewing with? When I'm on either side, I've been on the hiring side a lot of times, and I've been on the I want a job at your organization side of things, many times too. And I just process the information afterwards, and that's sort of what I'm doing right now. I'm just trying to do it out loud. And so basically, first of all, like it's really tough to find jobs right now to get like I've applied to many places, and I'm getting the lowest number. Like the amount of feedback that I'm getting, and that organizations that are interested in reaching out to me for interviews and stuff like that is still acceptable for now. Like it's still healthy. Like I'm still getting emails back. I'm still getting recruit or talent acquisition people that work in TA and stuff like that that want to set up meetings with me. And most of the time, if not nearly 100% of the time, for this round of applications and everything that I've been blasting out there converts into technical interviews and stuff like that. And I haven't, as of right now, kind of like the progress that I'm making within a few different organizations that I've been applying at, they're not like ending it. They're not saying like, oh, we're not happy with your technical results, or we're not happy with like the way that initial interviews are went, so we're gonna call stuff off right now. But getting that initial kind of like um, outreach connection, after you submit applications, is on a huge downtick right now. Um, in the past, when I've lived in Silicon Valley and I've been applying to positions and stuff like that, like I would get a ton of interest from people when I was sending out applications, to the point where that would almost be a problem, and I'd be really cautious about applications and starting interview process, because they're normally very involved in tech, involving multiple technical interviews, maybe a project that they assign to you to do at home, whether that's going to be infrastructure related, like build all of the stuff, that's probably going to take like 3 hours or something like that, or like here's some coding project for you to work on, like simulate a bank account that blah blah blah, nothing difficult, like super hard or anything like that. Maybe it'll be a little bit challenging, but it just stuff that takes a while to do, and it's like a chore. And if you have like 6 of those going on simultaneously while you have a full-time job, it just gets kind of overwhelming. But now, like I don't have that problem. I have the opposite problem, which is where I'm getting relatively little connection from blasting out applications. And I can imagine that somebody that's a little bit more junior in their career path, maybe they're a new graduate, or they just finished boot camps and they're trying to get into the industry, looking for their first tech job. Maybe it's only their second tech job, and they've been at their current company for about a year or something like that, and now they're wanting to transfer and stuff like this. And a lot of tech jobs, the tech industry has been going through major layoffs lately, and so now you have a lot of like people that would be more senior, that have experience like I have or something like that have been working in the industry for over 10 years. And that's who you're competing with for sometimes even junior level positions. And so it's really, really hard out there. And I'm in a very fortunate position. But that's the only position that I know. Like that's what I'm in right now. And so kind of like what my process is like for, because if you join the wrong company, right? Like first of all, let's just say, like that's not a problem. Let's just say there's an abundance of jobs out there and you can get a job relatively easily. And so you're applying for jobs and the first thing that lands on your desk is like the pay is decent, the benefits are decent, the blah, all of the stuff on paper like seems to work out. Well, if you join the company and it's not a good match for you, you don't like it, it's torture. Like working at a tech company, because it's all intellectual work that you're doing. Like when you're writing code, when you're setting up infrastructure, when you're doing monitoring services and stuff like that, it's all like up in your mind work, and you translate that into the keyboard and write code and do whatever else to kind of like realize those ideas and requirements and stuff like that. That is part of the job. And if you don't enjoy the people that you're working with, or you don't enjoy the company, maybe you don't have any interest in the product that the company creates and it's just like a paycheck for you or whatever, like it's psychologically torturous to do, because it's like, maybe the organization that you're with just really favors overly complex, over-engineered solutions for everything. And so you need to do something relatively simple. Deploy an application, like get an application that's written in Node, that's some TypeScripting or whatever, and containerize that and put it onto like a Kubernetes cluster or something and expose it to your users. And it's like, in order to do that, we're using, Spinnaker and Circle CI and like 30 different tools, and focusing on developer experience, overly focusing on developer experience and everything like this, to have this really kind of like really complex solution to a really simple problem. Like to me, that's not fun. Like I don't like that. Some engineers like that because of many different reasons. Maybe you feel that it's just the best solution to the problem, and that having this really complex setup is necessary for whatever reason, or maybe it comes from kind of a more if I have a more pessimistic outlook on it, maybe your team is creating job security for themselves, where it's just like, some product team just wants to deliver this product, and you need 75 cloud tools and merge to this persistent branch, but it's not your default branch. It's not your default persistent branch. It's a different persistent branch, and then that kicks off. And so on and so forth. And it's like, oh well, if you want to deploy this application, then you need an army of site reliability engineers or DevOps engineers or whatever to be able to do it. And you can't do it yourself or whatever. So all of our jobs are really good, and we're not going anywhere anytime soon because they need us, because we built systems to ensure that they're going to need us well into the future. And so the point is that obviously I'm really opinionated about the way that this kind of stuff works, because I've been in the industry for so long. Maybe my opinions are wrong. There are people that are much smarter than me that have different opinions than I do or whatever. And that's the whole point, is that like, not the most technically savvy individuals work at organizations that make quality products. And so not everything needs to have this really like complex intellectual solution to it in order to be a high quality value adding product for your users. And so when you're interviewing with the company, especially in the initial interviews, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And you really want to make sure you get into an organization that's a good fit for you. And you really want to be, it's really nice when you're negotiating or when you're operating from a position of abundance, and rather than from a position of like necessity, scarcity, and fear. Like, oh, I am not going to have a job and I only have savings that will last me with my current expenses, like, 6 months or something like that. And the job market's really hard right now. And so if I lose my job, or if I don't find a job, if you don't have a job already, then, you know, I have limited runway, and I need to find something, and I'll accept like the first job offer that comes across my desk or whatever. Whenever you're operating from a position of like desperation or a position of fear or a position of scarcity, I, in my experience, because I've definitely operated from those positions myself many times. I grew up very in complete poverty when I was younger, when I was a child and a young adult. Um, it could lead to situations where you're 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 not happy. You're not happy, and your life is not as great as you would like it to be. And so yeah, you're interviewing the company as much as they are interviewing you. And you know, generally when companies leave room for questions or whatever, when interviewers leave room for questions, that's, and I used to think of it this way, and earlier in my career when I was younger, was that like, oh, I need to ask questions that make me seem smart and make me seem like an attractive candidate or whatever. But I've reevaluated that, and I view it as like, okay, this is an opportunity to find out if the company is a match for me, if it's a company that I want to join. So what are the kinds of questions that you ask? It's like, well, you know, like how many engineers do you have that work for your organization? How distributed is the team? Do you work in different time zones? What does your on-call rotation look like? These practical types of questions that you could understand what the expectations and requirements for you to be available during off hours, and what the communication is like within the organization. How do you share information? What do you use Notion? Do you use Linear? What does your ticketing process look like? How do tickets get created? How do tickets get assigned? Do people, you know, does your infrastructure team, does your SRE team have the ability on Slack or something like that to freely communicate with the people that are in the product development team? Or do you have weird segmentations within the organization where you're not going to be able to do that? So if somebody makes a request and that request lands on my desk for whatever reason, you know, and I need to do it, and I'm unclear on some things or whatever, like, am I able to reach out to the people that are making that request? Are we able to amend the process for making these kinds of requests if consistently certain things aren't clear or whatever when I'm getting them? Like, can we, are individual contributors at the organization empowered to kind of like uplift processes and stuff like that that's at the organization? Or is it like basically when I'm asking these type of questions, I'm trying to understand, like, am I going to be just like a cog in your machine at your organization, or am I going to be like an individual contributor, an individual person with agency whose expertise in this field, from working in it for so long or whatever, is going to be kind of like valued and respected? Um, because I want to avoid going to an organization where I'm going to be a cog in the machine, because I already know, like, I've worked at large organizations and I've worked at startups, I've worked everywhere. I already know that kind of like the cog in the machine approach is really boring, and it leads, and if you're doing boring work, and generally if you're working for a larger organization, you're going to be working on widgets and stuff like that that you don't really care about. You're not going to have a complete picture of what what value your organization, what value the company that you're working for is giving to its users. And so if you don't have kind of like that innate understanding of like, this is the actual value that we're delivering to you, you're probably not going to really care about what you're delivering too much. It's going to lead to burnout really fast. And working through burnout also really sucks. Like when you're just not motivated, when you need to sit and talk yourself into being able to do 8 hours of work before you start doing the work. That's a bad sign, man. Like you don't want to be there. I've been there plenty of times. I know what leads to it. And it's, yeah, it's bad for your career. It's bad for your mind. It's bad for your skill development. And so you just want to take a lot of care in making sure that the organization is a good match for you, just as much as the organization is making sure that you are a good match for it. And you want to avoid working at the wrong place, if possible. Again, I'm speaking from a position of abundance, thankfully, as far as my professional life and career and jobs and stuff like that go. When I was earlier in my career, I would take whatever I could get. The first DevOps position that made an offer to me, I took it because I wanted to become a DevOps engineer, because I wanted to start working in infrastructure. I think that it's really interesting. It's very broad. There's a lot of stuff to understand. If you're a web developer and you do React, that's, and I'm sorry, any React developers I'm not trying to take a shit on you or anything like that, but to me, that's just not that interesting. Oh, I'm building UIs and operating completely within the domain of React. And I know a lot of React developers also understand backend. They also understand the internet and networking and how all of that stuff works, and they're really good. I'm not wholesale taking a shit on them or anything like that. But there are also a lot of junior React engineers that know React. They don't even know JavaScript. They just know one single framework that they're working with. And to me, that's super boring. That gets boring really fast. But DevOps and site reliability engineering is just cloud computing and Linux and networking and security and SDLC processes and where's your version control? What does the version control look like, and how do we kick pipelines off from that version control? How automated are things, et cetera, et cetera. There's just a million different opportunities to do stuff in different domains that it's just always interesting, and you're always learning some really cool stuff about how the internet works and how how services that you consume on a daily basis, how that works under the hood. And that keeps the job kind of fresh and interesting to me. And yeah, and so and I know that it's been said a lot, but just interview the place that is interviewing you as just the same, and make sure that you ask a lot of questions, that you understand what your daily work is going to look like, and don't be afraid to say no and to pass on jobs that don't seem like they would be a good fit for you. Because even if it entails a pay increase or something like that, if you have a gut feeling, if you talk to engineers and stuff like that, and here's another really important point, and this has bitten me at multiple jobs and stuff like that before too, is be really cautious of hiring managers that don't vet you enough, that don't give you the code interview. When I was at the when I was at the interview today, if I choose to proceed with this company, the next code interview that they're going to give me is actually a practical code interview, where I'm going to be doing stuff like manipulating files on a file system and processing them, doing ETL and stuff like that you actually will do on the job as a site reliability engineer relatively routinely. And that, and in contrast that with a code signal interview or an interview on one of these fucking websites that have these generic algorithm questions for you, where you're going to be reversing a string or zipping strings together or inverting doing binary search or sorting stuff or by array length or something like this. That isn't practical at all. And it's just a hoop that the company is making you walk through that you could probably pass just by using some LLM service or something like this. And then you pass it, and okay, cool, you pass that mark, move on in the interview. Now talk to this other person that's going to ask you some questions about a database or something like that. And then if you could do that sufficiently, then it probably turns into a job conversion. Well, if that's the way that they're interviewing you, that's also the way that they interviewed everybody else, which means that most of the engineers at the organization are probably going to be underskilled when you join. And then if you join an organization that's full of a bunch of underskilled engineers, that's also a nightmare situation, because the really simple problems are going to be huge issues, in perpetuity. And there's going to be a lot of people, oftentimes in management positions or in team lead positions, that are underqualified for the position that they're in as well. And that's who you're going to be reporting to. And then you get into weird things like, we judge our engineers' productivity based off of the amount of commits that they make into code bases or something like this. And it's just completely skewed metrics that don't mean anything. and it's kind of like a middle management equivalent of kind of like the traditional office working environment, where it's just like, think of the Office TV show that aired a while ago or something like that, where you just have this collection of people that go into an office every day and basically waste time. Like it doesn't even matter what they do. They just kind of you're just kind of like squandering your time throughout every day or whatever. Well, if you work at an organization that's like this, that's judging your productivity based off of the amount of commits that you're making or something like this, it's sort of like that for the tech space, I think. And it just leads to so many things, like philosophically. Like you could be challenged philosophically and existentially. It's like, what am I doing with my life? Like what am I collecting a paycheck for? Like supporting my family? Am I single? Like, am I just living for the weekends and I don't care about what I'm spending my 8 hours at least every day doing? I don't know. You could be comfortable and that rent is easy, and keeping food on the table is easy and stuff like this, but you slowly start turning into this like empty shell of a person because you don't care about what you're doing all day, but you have to be doing it. And so you're in an office or you're behind your computer screen at home or whatever throughout the majority of the day. And what do you live for, the evenings and the weekends? Okay, like I don't know. I would just rather feel like what I'm doing is meaningful throughout all parts of the day, socially, my family life, and my professional life that I have. And maybe that's, to go back to a previous video that I was making, maybe the solution in that is more entrepreneurship and kind of like working on your own projects and in finding out what's meaningful to you and then trying to kind of like provide that to the world yourself, rather than trying to just join a company and then have their value system and what the meaning that they're trying to provide to the world like assigned to you and assisting in that for them. So yeah, I mean, just kind of some thoughts on the whole process. I think try making your own company, try doing your own thing, try figuring out what's important to you and how would that be important to the world, and how can I package that in such a way that the world will pay me for it, will provide for me a means to live, rather than having to go to somebody else's, box factory and make the boxes for them. But in the meantime, I mean, I'm looking for another job right now. I need to be making money, while I'm working on these things, and I'm sure that other people are in the same position, and I'm sure that other people are in more dire straits, and especially now, I mean, the economy is a fucking dumpster fire, and you need to do what you need to do, but just be cautious about getting into, quote unquote, an ideal situation where you're making a good salary or whatever, but your fucking very meaning and essence of life is being chiseled away slowly, day by day, as you're building boxes at the box factory. And also be cautious that you don't go into an organization that's full of a bunch of like really underqualified, underskilled ghost engineers, because those exist. Like it exists. It's not everywhere. Not every organization is like this. A lot of big tech is like this. You think of places like Google, you think of places like Apple or whatever, and it's like, ooh, they only hire the best and the brightest. I've worked with a lot of people that have worked at Google for many years and are quite underskilled. And that's you work at one of these companies, you have that name on your resume. Oh, I was there for 2 years or whatever before they finally it takes a really long time at these organizations to like get people out the door and stuff like that if they're not contributing to your teams or whatever. And so it's not that, like a hiring manager that's low effort hiring manager that sees the Google on the resume or the Apple on the resume or something like this is just like, oh, this person's a shoo-in. They worked at this like hard organization, that's very selective or whatever like that for a few years, and they're not really that selective. It's fizz buzzing and zip two strings together and generic coding interviews interviews like that you could study for that have absolutely no practical impact on the job that you'll be doing whatsoever. It's just like, can you write code? Do you understand what an algorithm is? Like, okay, like, but I mean, how does that when you have actual work to do? Like when you're an SRE, okay, I zipped some strings together, but now I need to connect this application to this database. Can you do that? Like, do you know how networking works? Do you know how security works? Like, are you just exposing the database publicly? You know, and so on and so forth. Like it's and so, you know, I look for practical questions when I'm interviewing. If I get a bunch of generic cruft, if I get a bunch of generic kind of like filler questions or whatever, and that's it, like I'm probably going to be passing on that position. I'm probably not going to be continuing with the interview process, you know? And so anyways, just like some random thoughts that I had about that whole thing today, because I was going through some interviews today. I hope that everybody finds some good opportunities and that can kind of like weather the storm that the world's going through right now, because the economy is in a very unhealthy posture, and it's tough out there. So yeah, best of luck to everybody, and those are just some of my random thoughts. Bye.